Hi, I'm Tiffany, and welcome to the Album Diaries. Here I'll be chatting about personal experiences that influenced my musical journey and career. I'll talk monthly about the albums and how they affected my personal life.
Hey guys, welcome back to episode 4 of the Album Diaries with
Hello, Tiffany. How's everybody guys doing? How's it going?
How's it going, guys? We're talking album 4 today, which is called Dreams Never Die. Dear God, we pray that is still the case.
Yes.
And we're going to dive. This is going to be a really fun conversation because, like, Tiffany's becoming a woman here. She's not fully there, but she's getting there. And you can even tell we're going to talk about some of the album covers and how they've progressed. We wore a matching sequence
We
today.
did, representing a little black and white, a little good and bad.
The good and the bad.
The
here.
good and the bad, all of it.
Okay, so this album, it's 1993 when this album comes out. First of all, there are 18 tracks on the album.
It's a lot. Yeah.
I was listening while
Couldn't
making
make up our
breakfast.
mind on this album.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's country, there's pop, there's ballads, there's dancing, there's reggae.
We couldn't make up our mind on this
Yeah.
album.
Start with that. There wasn't maybe a lot of focus. Talk to me about
Oh, well, this album is Return to George Tobin. I was a new mom. I just had Elijah. I think he was 6 months old when I did this album. So a lot of transition for me. Moved from Orange County, the big house, scaling it back because, I'm a new mom. I've got other responsibilities, not touring as much. So moving up to the mountains, I moved up to Big Bear, which was lovely, but a nightmare
that. Oh, wow.
to try to commute to the valley, if you know LA, every day to record the album.
And with a kid.
And with a baby. So Elijah was, God bless him. He's amazing. I'm so glad that God gave me the right temperament of the child to be, cool. He never was a problem. He really wasn't. He slept through the whole thing. It was great. So yes, new mom, traveling down to the studio, trying to do those hours like I used to and be a mom. I'm still not writing songs because I'm back into that climate again with George. So that wasn't welcomed, although I had had my time in New York and felt so validated and so free. And so that was never applied to this album because, again, I was back into that mindset where we're going to give you songs. We don't really need anything from you. We don't want you to write. And I went back, truthfully, because we were talking earlier when we were doing our makeup backstage, and it was like a lot of people saw the album New Inside not be successful. Dick Scott had kind of parted out of my life. He had health problems, so he really couldn't manage me anymore. I started looking for new managers, and it really went back full circle to George Tobin. No one in that camp that knew him or had affiliation wanted to manage me.
So yeah, think about that because you were mentioning that to me earlier. It was like you had luckily somebody be truthful with you at a label, say no one's going to touch you for a while, and that's something now. Not only that's a whole different pressure on this record that you didn't have on the one prior because it's like, well, first of all, having a child, as we all know, in any career, that's pressure in itself.
Right.
You've got to say yes to a lot more things, and that add on it, people saying no one's going to work with you because who you're associated with.
Right. I mean, everyone was like, wow, if New Inside would have been successful, you would have had your path and go on your way. But now, it wasn't that it totally bombed, but again, coming back to find a new management and anybody in the LA camp that had any affiliation with the earlier albums, they just felt like George Tobin would hunt them down. And they didn't want to deal with it. So I really did have someone be honest with me, and that kind of saved me a little bit because I was knocking on those doors, not understanding why. And people were so flattering. Yes, you're great as a vocalist. I would sign you, but I don't want to deal with George. I don't need his, him harassing me. So I felt like I just hit a brick wall there for a while. And, I ended up going back. George was calling me. I needed the money, to be quite honest with you, new parent. I'm not touring now. It all starts from music. So going back into that. And I thought I had negotiated a good one. I thought there was some clear understanding, but there wasn't. I was back into the same old mess, really.
Well, and you correct me if I'm wrong, or I know I'm not wrong because you're never going to get this deal when you're negotiating as yourself, you as Tiffany. Like you weren't at a place to be able to do that, and you were gonna.
Yeah, I think that, again, going back with George, because it was kind of like a dad going, "Oh, you thought you were gonna be, all that and go out there with new people, and it didn't work out, and now you're here. So you're gonna do even more what I say." And we
How's
fought a
therapy
lot.
going? Working through that
I
today?
should have had therapy at that
Seriously.
time. I didn't. I mean, my mindset was, look, I want my career back. I definitely, I'm so young. I need to still make money for my child. And this is my job. This is what I do. I miss my fans. I want to continue my dream with my family. I've got it all now. I've got my little boy, and I'm ready to tour the world. That wasn't a hindrance for me. But I didn't know how to make those new connections with anybody. It seemed like that wall was there. And coming back to George, I felt like, well, okay, this is a chance. He's wanting to do it. There's an Asian tour, a European tour being talked about, an American tour. Elijah can go. Let's go. And there's also a little seed in back of me that said, just ride it out. If it's not overly successful, at least I'll be with my son, my family, and I get to show my son the world, even though he was only like 2 at the time. By the time the whole
But
album was
how
done.
amazing that you were able to see it from such a different perspective because you were a mother.
Yeah, that was I think that was like the rescue for me a little bit, because again, I was back into recording, getting songs that I didn't feel were that great, wasn't writing again. So the frustration, we were just right back into the same old mess, like I said. But I had Elijah there with me, and it was, we're going to go travel the world. I'm going to show you what I do. We're going to have fun. And sometimes that's the best you can do. There's so much out of my hands, but I was being offered this opportunity to record again, and to do a tour and to make some money and be out there with my fans, and I took that opportunity.
So, Ty, you mentioned you didn't write the songs on this album, which
No.
is good because I need to talk to you about
A few of them.
a few of them. Never Gonna Eat Out My Heart Again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ain't gonna eat out my heart anymore.
so
Yeah, don't know
what's
don't know what
that?
that's about.
Well, no, but it is. I guess if you could see it as a time where it's like we're gonna all, like you said, there's so many different genres on it. They definitely stay in that '90s world, and something that that really hit me this morning listening to this record is to listening to you at 16 and listening to you today at whatever lovely age you are. Your voice has
Google.
never changed outside of maturing. That is powerful, and that is speaks so true to who you are in this industry. As y'all know, as a singer, your voice has not changed in the
Thank you.
best of ways.
Thank you.
Like
I
it's
think I've
only
gotten stronger as a
Yes.
vocalist now. I know my voice more. And I think maybe on this record, because I am so diverse as a vocalist, they were just trying everything. Really. There's reggae on this album, there's country, there's some straightforward pop, there's a little bit of like an alternative attempt.
kind of Joan Jetty vibes.
There's a lot
Yeah,
going
there's a
on,
lot.
really. I do have highlights that I love. Sam Loves Joanne is one of my favorite songs on this album. It is a country song. And that was a little seed again. I mean, I started off in country, and singing that song, I thought, well, maybe I should go back to country. But that rocker in me was still wanting to live. But I do think that's a well-written song. I do love Loves Joanne,
a
and
great
I've
song.
done it in some of my shows. That's Joanne. How could you leave your man? I love it. I love that song. So there are highlights on this album, but it is all over the shop. I mean, it really, and the whole thing about it was I was recording these songs, and as I was recording them, I had found out that George had already recorded these songs with another band and released the album. So when I did do my Asian tour, my Southeast Asian tour, people were saying, "So are you a huge fan of PC Quest?
You're covering all their
You've
songs.
covered all of their album." And I was so pissed. I mean, I did like PC Quest, but that I didn't know that had happened. So for me, as you know, again, like
Not okay as a
returning
manager,
to
to be
Southeast,
clear.
exactly. That's not really cool. But that was a struggle for me because it was frustrating. I hadn't been, to a lot of places like Japan in years, and to be greeted with, "Hey, how come you did a cover on all of these, songs?" I was horrified,
And to not know.
and to not know. I only knew after I recorded them, and they were on their way out for release.
Good times.
Good times, everybody.
Okay, the girl in me always likes to talk about boys. So, do you want to dive in all about your relationship during this time because you are a new mom?
Mhm.
That means there is a dad.
Married. Yeah, married. I mean, my life was great. I was a new mom. Thrown into the music industry, again. I think I took maybe 6 months off, something like that, when Elijah was first born, and getting it together, all the new mom stuff that you're doing. I wasn't working. I just stayed around family and had a blast adapting to new mom. But by 6 months is when it seemed like, okay, well, what are we doing now? Like, we need to start going back to work. I
That's
also
cute.
had
But
just
let's
left a
go.
huge property that I just saw a couple of days. I was like, days ago, I was like 5 minutes away from it, my Orange County property. I loved it there, but man, it was a huge bill. It was like 22,000 on
Back
my
then.
on my mortgage, and another 10 just to keep the property together.
Oh my
I
god.
had some really fancy pants grass that you had to cut by hand, and all of this, and 3 lakes, and it was gorgeous. I bought the home from Chuck Norris, who gave me all of my love for martial arts. So that's where that comes from, guys. But
Had martial
I wouldn't
energy.
want to be that girl again. Although it was beautiful, it was a big upkeep, and there was French doors on my property, and you can't redo those. The house really needed that look. But I had a baby. I don't want like no screen doors, no locks on my doors, and 3 lakes in my front yard. No,
Terrifying.
thank you. So we moved. But again, there was that adjustment. I was working so much that I was able to make those bills. But when you take time off the road, so I downsized a lot. But the new mom and the what am I going to do, and of course my zest for my career, wanting to keep doing it. I was too young to retire. I didn't want to do that. I definitely felt, okay, it's time to go back to work.
Did you feel because I know a lot of your listeners and followers are have kids, and I have a 4-year-old, so this resonates with me. And you and I were just talking a little bit about this earlier, but how did you feel like so your relationships in your life did you have other friends that were now new moms? I know you don't have other friends that were also famous like you that were new moms,
No.
right?
No, I
So
didn't
what is
have
that
anyone.
like from a trying to find your tribe during this time perspective?
It was a little difficult. I mean, all of my friends were still my buddies. A lot of them had already had kids. Again, a lot of my girlfriends had children when they were 16, 17. So I have a lot of god
Wow.
kids out there.
Yeah.
But they weren't going on the road. They weren't going to other countries. They didn't have the responsibility that I had. And that was difficult to man, to be a mom and be, all of that you needed, and then to walk away from your son and be able to just give him to a nanny. I really got lucky though. My mother-in-law at the time traveled with me. So that was complete, that's it. Grandma's
Always the
always the
best.
favorite. So that's it. That was sorted. I didn't have to worry about that. But all the other things you worry about while you're, away for hours and hours, you just worry. I mean, it's just normal.
Did you deal with any guilt because of that? About not being around him, not being full-time mom?
I didn't, because I took him everywhere I went, though.
Okay.
Elijah did roll with me, and I'm very lucky that I did have a really good kid. Like, he was chill. He just came out that way.
Well, let's talk about that
Thank
though.
goodness.
Maybe he did, but it's also, again, being the mother of a 4-year-old. I really admire how you raised your son.
Thank
Being
you.
friends with you all these years, I've always really respected how you parented, giving him those opportunities because you were able. It's like some things that he didn't get from you, maybe because of your
Mhm.
career. he got tenfold in other ways.
He learned to be around other people. I mean, a lot of the early stuff he doesn't remember, but at least I didn't feel like I had to sacrifice and leave him, at home. The one time I did, and I think that's another reason why when he was young, he always was traveling with me. But then there was a period where he was walking and it wasn't convenient for his grandma to be with us. So I left him with her in California. And that was when he took his first steps. And I
Oh,
wasn't
so you missed
there.
his first
So
step.
that was it. He was here with me the rest of the time. Yeah, because that was heartbreaking for me. I remember getting that phone call and he's walking. I was a mess because I wasn't there. So yeah, you feel guilty. You feel like you missed out on something. But I was lucky. I was able to make it work. I was able to bring him out on the road with me and travel. And I felt like because I was able to do that, I was more in the moment. I wasn't worried about going home. I was like, oh, okay, I'm here. I've got everybody I need here. So we're good.
So because you hadn't written on this album, do you start you writing? Does that help him on the next album?
It does.
Okay.
Yes. I start to write on the next album
Okay,
because
so
this was really a frustration point for me. Again, I didn't feel the songs were great. It was a lot of compromise and it was a lot of what do I do now? I mean, I need to return to work, and the only person that is offering that for me, I do have some issues with. There's some good stuff there. We definitely, George and I care about each other, but we just disagree. So I kind of knew that was going to happen going in, but I thought I could man it. And, I see now that it was like, oh, it was one of those things. You think you're going to go off and do your thing and now you're back. So definitely it had its good and bad.
so speaking on that, you're going knowing that we're leading toward you to start becoming a songwriter,
Right.
and you're a great songwriter today. You're in a time, obviously, and I know you journal and do a lot of that. Were you really maybe either consciously or subconsciously starting to, as you now are a mom and you're on your own, write down and think about? Would you say this is a time in your life where you kind of became a songwriter because you had so much to learn from and grow from?
I think it was always like songwriting really and building to that, but this was a time for me that I was connecting the dots of how I was going to continue to be Tiffany. If I continue to stay in the music industry. Uh Clearly I was aware of some challenges, and there had to be some space between myself and George, for people to feel comfortable, but yet there also had to be some success for them to want to be a part of my life. And because it's a business, that's how it is. And
And
so I
you are the
really
business.
had, yeah, I'm the business. So I had to like connect the dots. This was a grow up moment for me within, not just as an artist musically, but the business side, to understand, okay, I'm a brand and I have to do certain things to show people and gain their confidence and continue on. I'm going to have to do some sacrifices, and I'm going to have to maneuver this a certain way. So I think that's what started. After this album, I didn't do another album for almost 8 years.
Oh,
So
wow,
it
was that
took
long?
me time to really get it together.
Well,
But
there's 18 songs on this album, so people needed
so
time to listen to it.
exactly.
There's that too.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, because I wouldn't say it was a bad experience. It was a frustrating experience for me. Again, going to, all the different countries that I went to go, I'm back, and to be asked, why am you doing a remake album for a band that did okay? It was insulting to me. It was frustrating to me. And again, I felt like I had so many other variables out of my hands, which is always the case in the music industry, even today. That applies. But you do hope that, when you're putting something out, it's gonna pop, and it's gonna be fresh, and it's gonna be the one that makes it. And I felt like there was a lot of challenges on this album already that had nothing to do with me.
And something I want to talk about, you mentioned a few minutes ago when we were getting ready that with George, um, almost to this day, you're combating that. And and so much that you do on your own because nobody knows your brand and business better than you. Right. So who better to run it than you? But because of that, some of the things that you mentioned earlier that you still battle because of connections and past connections. So talk a little bit about how important that is to really who you align yourself can affect you forever.
It really can. You have to take those opportunities. You don't know what everything is going on with people in their life, and people can change as well. There's could be things that crop up that you had no clue, but it does matter because who you associate with will continue to be how people judge you. And really, for me, it wasn't that George was such a bad person because obviously I was successful because of him. But the way of him working, I think was, he was a little intrusive, very harsh. And I think people just, if they didn't have to put up with it, they chose not to. And obviously taking me back into their life or in their space, they knew that still came along with me and they weren't up for the challenge.
Rightfully so, it sounds like. So we're talking with Tiffany, the Album Diaries. This is the 4th album we're talking about. Dreams Never Die. Thank you, Jesus. It came out in 1993. I want to close and ask you, because I love asking this question, what is your kind of favorite memory during this time? And let's start with the other. What was the hardest thing during this time in your life and the greatest thing during this time, this chapter of your life? Obviously, you have a child, which is awesome. But
the hardest thing was probably, again, the lack of success with this album. It was a little, again, lackluster. It didn't really take. And then again, the inner fightings with George and the letdowns and just being, feeling like, well, this isn't what I was told. So that was the letdown. The highlight was traveling with Elijah, and showing him who I am and showing him the world. Even though it was little, it meant the world to me. And I want to say this is when Tiffany the foodie started to kick off.
Oh, okay.
Because that actual particular tour, I had some time because I had my son, and I made sure that I had some days off, which I never did for myself before. So Mama made sure that we took it in. We could go and see the sights. But that led me to checking out little places of, food places.
Because you had to eat.
And local places and realizing and getting to know people and then realizing, oh, wow, it's not like just eating at the hotel. And that totally changed my palate. That totally changed. I remember I had blood clot soup, which I didn't know was blood clots at the time. It's really disgusting. But it was in Taiwan. But my friend Bubble took me to the local place.
Did you hear both things you just said?
It tasted okay until I got that blood clot. And she's like, oh, no, that's our soup. So no offense, but it's not my favorite. And but yeah, I mean, that I was learning different foods, guys. I was traveling the world and actually seeing things.
With Bubble is
with Bubble. Yes. Hi, Bubble. She's still my fan out there.
Hey,
I
girl,
love you.
Hey. Oh my God, I learned something new about you every day. I want you to cook for me, but I don't want blood clots.
I don't want them either. Sorry, they're not my favorite.
No offense. I guess if times get tough,
I won't have that in my cookbook. I don't think so, guys.
Okay, I'm excited. I love that we're like getting more in depth every time, and it's really cool. I'll end with this because it's neat to see from the album covers. Like the first one, it's like you can see you were a teenager, you were a kid, you were learning, and then to this album now you've got like the side braid. It's like I'm a mom. I'm like still I've got to be sort of conservative, but I'm a woman. And then the next one, I can't wait. It's like I am woman.
There's a growth spurt for sure. Yeah, definitely.
So it's really been fun to watch your progression.
And the next album, I start writing. So again, all of your comments of like talk about the songs. I didn't write them. I sang them. I've told you my favorites and some of my non-favorites. Yeah. But it really starts to kick off for me the next album, which is me as a songwriter, and that's where I'm speaking to you guys as my fans about what's happening in my life. Those are my thoughts on in a melody. So it gets better, guys.
So you got to come back. I'm Lindsay Lawler. We're live from the Music Loft with Tiffany, the Album Diaries. Go back and listen to them. Actually, and then make sure you listen to album 5 before the next conversation so we can really talk songwriting. Yeah. But this is so fun. Keep leaving your comments. Ask questions so we know what to ask next time. Stick around.
I love you guys. Definitely. And check out the Shadows tour and all things tiffanytunes.com, guys, because we're going to be to it in a city near you very soon.
Coming at you. Check back.
Take care.
Got the biggest brown eyes, and you know how to punch your lips to tantalize. Sure,